How you doing? Back in the wood shop with Mr. C, and we're talking about the wood lathe and safety and proper setup using the wood lathe. What I'd like to go over here is how to properly mount material on the lathe and some safety things that you're going to need to do to make sure you do before you go ahead and operate this machine. And I'll show you how to use a roughing gouge to bring this square piece of stock down to a cylinder. Okay? Now, whenever you're using this, like in our past video, you've seen how to go ahead and mark the ends of this and create the X pattern or the pattern for the spur drive to be taken into the material, so that way it will drive this material in around as far as it's rotating the material. Okay, so I'm going to take the spur drive, I'm going to place this right inside the headstock. This right here is called the headstock. Okay, this right here, the live center, this spins. This is in the tailstock. Right now this is, I need to loosen this up. Okay, so we move this back and forth. I have to address something. We have weights in the bottom of the machine. The reason why we have weights at the bottom of the machine is if we had a piece or a timber that was not centered perfectly, or the weight can't be distributed perfectly, it'll rock the lathe. This will prevent it from moving. So we always have weight in the bottom of the lathe. That way it gives a little bit more weight and gravity down on it, so that way the machine's most likely not going to move. Okay? We have our guard on here. Let's pull this up. Like this is typically in this position. I'm going to pull this up so that way you can see what's happening here. Okay? Now, this is the tool rest that we're going to be using. Tool rest holder. I'm going to just take this, place this inside of here. Okay, now we have this in. I'm going to go ahead and tighten this up some. Okay, now to mount this, this is the end with the X. It's going to go to the spur drive side. So I'm going to place this in here. I'm going to slide up the tailstock. I'm going to lock the tailstock in place. Loosen this up. And I put it right on the X. And I want this to just go in some, and I back it out just a little bit, lock this in place. Okay? Also up here, you can see that the spurs have located themselves inside of the machine, or the headstock. Like this. Now I'm going to take my tool rest. I'm going to take my tool rest and bring this up to the material. I'm going to rotate this by hand, and actually I can move this down a little further. So I have this locked in place. I lock the tool rest in place. It's not moving. I rotate my material, and I want to make sure it's about 1/8 of an inch away from the stock. So the tool rest is 1/8 of an inch away from the material that you're going to be turning. When I say turning, I mean you're using the lathe. Okay? Someone that uses a wood lathe is called a turner. Okay? So that's how you use that. This is how you set the material up properly to go ahead and start turning a block to make it into a cylinder. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab my first tool, which is a roughing gouge. You only want to have one tool out at a time. You don't want to have several tools laying out or set out, because something can fall or something can get into the machine. You don't want to do that. So on here, on this particular machine, we have like this little arrow here. We have the start button. Oh, okay. What you want to do is you turn this on, and you have it set at the slowest setting while it's still in the rough. When it's square, it's in the rough stock. Until I get it down to a cylinder, I want this in the slowest position possible. When I'm standing here, when I'm using a lathe, I want to have my feet about shoulder width apart. I place my tool on the tool rest. Now I'm going to show you underhand technique, which is you have the tool, your hand is underneath the tool. I place this on the tool, the material itself. As I bring this up, it starts cutting, and I move it down. I want to stop this for a second, and I want to explain something, because I don't want the machine to make too much noise. As I'm cutting, I want to go from the largest diameter to smallest diameter, okay? Also, I have the tool on my hip. I do not have it out here. So when I'm turning this, underhand technique-wise, I have this on my hip, and I have my hand underneath here. You notice that the tool is on the tool rest, my hand's underneath here. I'm using the tool rest as kind of a guide, and I have my other hand over or on the side, and I bring this back and forth. I have a lot of control this way. I'm moving my whole body, not my arms, okay? So what I want to do is I'm going to turn this back on, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I have the tool rest set, the tool on the tool rest. I bring this up, and I start cutting. Okay. As you can see, my feet are shoulder width apart. I bring the material up, my tool up to the material, it's not cutting. I bring the tool up at an angle. Once it starts cutting, I go into the spot. You notice I just move my whole body over. I don't want to talk while I'm doing this because I'll end up eating wood chips. Okay? I'm going to move this handle out of the way. So go ahead. Turn it off. I just move this over. Okay? Now, that's underhand technique. I want to show you overhand technique. I'll be using the palm of my hand here against the edge to use that as a guide. Okay? Same thing from largest diameter to smallest diameter. If you can see, we still have the edges here where it's square, and as it's tapered down, it's almost to a cylinder here. I have a little bit of a flat spot here. Let me rotate, a little bit of a flat spot there. But as you can see, it's starting to become a cylinder. I have to be aware of all the wood chips to the floor. I'm going to want to make sure I clean those up shortly, okay? But I want to show you overhand technique. I'm going to turn this on. Now that I've knocked the majority of the edges over, I can go ahead and turn up the RPMs.